despite the magnificent 3-0 away victory at Nottingham Forest before the international break. The position of Graham Potter remains a talking point, and his life as a West Ham manager is still in the balance, I think it's fair to say. The next few games will go some way to deciding his long-term future at London Stadium. We're going to get into the discussion about a name that has become available that could be a replacement for him. I really want your comments in the section below on this, because it's all a game of opinions and mine's not the only one in town. So I'd like to hear what you guys have got to say. Also, if you could do me a favour, please don't forget to drop a like on the stream, because that gets this content out there to places it otherwise might not get. And also just make sure below that you're subscribed to the channel. If you're not, please consider clicking the button. It doesn't cost you a copper coin. We don't have any of your personal details. It takes a second of your time. It helps to grow the channel. What's not to like? We're all one West Ham family. Let's support one another. Talking of support, you might have noticed my hoodie, Iron Supporting Food Banks. Please keep them in mind. The link to their Just Giving page will be below. It's to help families, needy families in the Newham and Essex area, to help feed their families in these tough times. Right, okay, so let's get stuck into this. Now, it's fair to say that Graham Potter has been under quite a bit of pressure of late. He's managed to have a little bit of respite from that with a brilliant 3-0 away win at Nottingham Forest, which, ironically enough, has in part been a reason why Nuno Espirito Santo has been relieved of his Nottingham Forest duties as their head coach. There was obviously also interlinked with that some comments that Nuno had made in the run-up to that game, which seemed to make it apparent that there'd been a bit of a falling out with the owner of Nottingham Forest, Evangelos Marinakis, who is also the owner of Olympiacos Football Club, who won the Europa Conference League 1 year on from our own magnificent victory in 2023 in Prague. So Nuno Espirito Santo is currently out of work. And I think it's fair to say that there will be a lot of people that would look at Nuno and be asking the question, if this victory away at Nottingham Forest proves to just be an anomaly and we go back to losing games and shipping goals quite heavily, could it possibly be that Nuno Espirito Santo might have to be considered as a viable option? Well, let's consider it. He did a magnificent job at Wolves. When he first came into English football, it was via Wolverhampton Wanderers, who at the time were languishing in the EFL, in what is the Championship. They weren't doing too well previous couple of seasons, and he came in. A heavy Portuguese influence in that particular team at that time. They'd been taken over by Fosun, a Chinese group of investors, and they leaned heavily on the Portuguese super agent Jorge Mendes for support. A lot of the players that came in around that time were from Portugal, as well as the manager, obviously, Nuno Espirito Santo. Interesting little fact, which you may not be aware of about Nuno, is that he actually has a Champions League winners medal. If you cast your mind back to when Jose Mourinho first really sort of burst onto the scene as far as English fans were concerned in the main, was when he took Porto to the 2004 Champions League final. Along the way, they actually knocked Manchester United out, and there's that very famous scene of when the Porto player scores the goal that knocks Manchester United out, which was in the dying embers of a game at Old Trafford. Jose Mourinho goes charging down the touchline and does a knee slide in his Armani suit. Quite an iconic image. Well, in the final, where they played Monaco and won 3-0, Nuno Espirito Santo was actually the reserve goalkeeper for Porto. He also got in the Euro 2008 squad for the Portuguese national team, but he doesn't actually have a cap for Portugal in his playing days. Fast forward to now, 51 years of age, and he's been a manager at various clubs with quite a bit of experience in England. So he comes into Wolves in the Championship, and he hits the ground running, gets them promoted. They win the EFL Championship at a canter. They get into the Premier League, and they more than hold their own. As time goes on, it starts to sort of go a little bit in the wrong direction, but they're still doing quite creditable things for a club, given their previous sort of difficulties. They was in the Championship for quite a few years and not really going anywhere. Now all of a sudden they're in the Premier League and they're mixing with the big boys and leaving a few of them with a bloody nose here and there. When his time at Wolves was done, he then, at some point in the future of that point, he finds himself as the manager of our rivals, Tottenham Hotspur. It didn't go so well for him there, and I will come back to that, but we'll just gloss over that. He was manager of Tottenham for a short period of time before moving on. He eventually finds himself as the manager of Nottingham Forest. He went into the hot seat after Steve Cooper was relieved of his duties, and he went into a Nottingham Forest team that was really struggling at that point. They actually had a 4-point deduction in the Premier League, and it looked to all intents and purposes that they were doomed. However, against all odds, Nuno Espirito Santo turns the tide and saves them from relegation. And then, lo and behold, the following season gets them to the heady heights of 7th place. It could be argued, however, that there was one point in time, if I remember correctly, they were in 3rd. They were in a Champions League position, in contention for the top prize in European football, or the top competition in European football. So 7th place was the finish, and as a result, and it's kind of by the back door, but it's as a result of the situation at Crystal Palace, who won the FA Cup and thereby qualified for the Europa League. 7th place getting Nottingham Forest qualification for the Conference League. But because of the situation that was unfolding at Palace in relation to John Textor and the shares that he has at Lyon, and the fact that both Lyon and Crystal Palace were in the same UEFA Cup, as I call it in old money, the Europa League now, it meant that UEFA had to make the call to push not Palace down to the Conference League, and the replacement team for them was Nottingham Forest. So there was a swap over, hence why there's this new rivalry between those two clubs, which has come off of the back of that. 7th place finish, though, absolutely creditable, no problem. But then we come into this season, there was the rumours, which Nuno confirmed in an interview, that there had been a bit of a falling out between himself and the owner of the club, Evangelos Marinakis. So you knew it was a matter of time until there was going to be a parting of the ways. Lo and behold, probably a big catalyst for that was the 3-0 defeat, which came in the last 8 minutes of the match at home against us, a team that was struggling. So you can imagine that Marinakis wouldn't have been very impressed with that, and that was probably the final nail in the coffin. So Nuno's out of a job. Now, as I say, if Graham Potter carries on struggling, then I think it's fair to say that Nuno inevitably will be linked. But is he the right choice? Personally, my opinion is no, he's not. And that might seem quite harsh for a guy that last season finished 7th, but bear with me. And forgive me for saying this, but I'm going to now go back and look at his time at Tottenham. Now, I know a lot of people might recoil at what I'm about to say, but I do think that there is a similarity between what Tottenham fans expect from their team and what we expect from our team. We're both a group of supporters that expect a certain style of play. We're both a group of supporters that would like to see our team playing on the front foot. We're both supporters that want to see our teams playing open, expansive, attractive, attacking football, scoring goals, and possibly, by virtue of that, maybe giving up a degree of pragmatism to sort of keep the fans entertained. We accept that we're going to concede goals, and we might even concede victories by doing this. But entertainment is a big part of what West Ham fans and Tottenham fans traditionally down the years have wanted to see from their teams. And this is where I think that Nuno would probably not be the right choice. Because if you look at a lot of his team stylistically, he's quite similar to previous West Ham managers, and indeed the current one, Graham Potter, similar to David Moyes. Also, an influence, as I said earlier, he was the backup goalkeeper to the Porto team in 2004 that won the Champions League, that was managed by Jose Mourinho. And I do think that Jose has a big influence on how Nuno has probably put his teams together. Very pragmatic, very hard to beat, counter-attacking type football. And we're there now, in essence, with Graham Potter and the style that he employs. We were there previously with David Moyes. And whilst I've got a great deal of appreciation for what David Moyes did, he got us that great night, as I referenced earlier, in Prague. When you play counter-attacking football, you need to win a good percentage of the games. Because if you don't, you've got nothing to hang your hat on. Again, as West Ham fans, we have a certain expectation of what we're going to see from our teams. And when it started to go wrong under Moyes, it got pretty ugly pretty quickly. And I do think that replacing Potter with another manager that is not fundamentally going to change our style of play might improve our results, perhaps. But us West Ham fans, we do expect a certain style of play to be from the team that's on the pitch. I could be out of whack. I could be wrong. I'm not going to sit here and say I'm wrong. I'm just going to tell you my opinion. And then I'm going to ask you for yours. So what do you think? Nuno Espirito Santo, would he be a viable option as West Ham manager? Ironically enough, if I can just go on to say, I do actually think that the guy that's just replaced him as Nottingham Forest manager, Ange Postecoglou, would probably be a better fit. And again, I know that there are going to be people that recoil in horror at the mere suggestion of someone who very recently was a Tottenham Hotspur manager and won them the Europa League could walk into London Stadium as the manager. But again, I'm thinking from a style of play point of view, an ethos, a philosophy, I think, is the way that modern managers like to express it. I think that Ange Postecoglou's DNA as a football coach is more akin to what most West Ham fans, especially the old school fans like myself, would probably like to see from West Ham United. But obviously he's now walked in and he's now the head coach at Nottingham Forest, so he's off the menu. But what do you think? Nuno Espirito Santo, West Ham manager potentially, if things go back to the way they were prior to the Nottingham Forest game, which hopefully they won't. Cards on the table, I'm not someone that likes to see managers getting sacked left, right and centre. But obviously if it continues, then this might become something that rears its head again and we might have to look at. But what do you think? If Graham Potter's tenure as West Ham manager again comes under scrutiny, if it again, maybe we need to look at moving him on and going down a different direction of travel, is Nuno Espirito the man, as far as you're concerned, that David Sullivan should be looking at? Get me your thoughts in the section below. Please also don't forget to drop a like on the stream. That will help us get this content out there to places otherwise it might not get. And don't forget to check if you're subscribed. If you're not, please do. In the last 28 days, it's now around 58% of the viewership were not subscribed to the channel. We want to try and move that down, and we want to try and move the subscribers numbers up, which last I looked stand at 1563. So let's try and move that along together. We're all one West Ham family. Let's come together. And as I say, remember to give your support to the Iron Supporting Food Banks charity. Their details will be in the description below. If you can chuck a couple of quid in the pot to help the needy in the Newham and the Essex area, that would be very much appreciated. Anyway, I'm going to disappear. Give us your thoughts in the comment section below. Stay safe. Come on, you Irons.